If you watched last week's video, you already have seen this beautiful Dobby fabric. I've washed and dried it. It washed up beautifully. The line shows up very nicely, that nice open weave line. So I'm very excited to sew it up, and I even showed the pattern. So we're going to be sewing Vogue 9255. This is a vintage swimsuit pattern that they put back in the books with a little cover up, this little smock style top. And I'm just going to make the top and not wear it as a cover up. I'm going to wear it as a little shirt. And I'm not going to do these giant pockets because I just don't think they're very flattering. I might try it someday with a cute pocket on it. Not my favorite to have a big patch pocket on the outside. So not doing the pocket on the top today because I'm not going to wear it as a cover up. So we're going to go ahead and get this cut out. I've already started, got my pattern in my size that I want, and I've already cut my interfacing for the yoke part. So I'm going to go ahead and lay everything out, get it cut, and then we'll head over to the sewing machine. This should be a very fast little project. The sleeve on this is long, and it's meant to be rolled up into a cuff that's sort of elbow length. The nice thing is you can roll it a little higher or lower, depending on the length you want, if you like a 3/4 sleeve or if you want more of a short sleeve. But I am going to go ahead and cut it the full length so you have a nice full cuff and more options. And I can even see this style being cute with like a turtleneck under it. I can wear this quite a bit of the year. So, time to get cutting. Now I always cut my pattern out in my size, make any alterations that I want to make, trim away all the excess tissue paper so that I have exactly the thing I want to cut out. That's my personal preference. I tend to make less mistakes if I go through and do that on the front end. So pattern is completely prepped and pressed. I like a nice crispy critter pattern. A good pressed out pattern cuts out better. If you pre-treat your fabric and it comes out really wrinkly, give it a good press before you cut, just so that you have a more accurate cut and everything sews together happier. Now these pieces are all cut on the fold, except for the sleeve. I'm going to refold this, not on the center, because I don't need it that wide. Because it has these nice lines in it, it makes it very easy to keep it straight on my center or on my gray line, so we won't have any issues. So in order to get all the pieces cut out the way I wanted them, I chose to do one of the yoke pieces. You have to cut two of each yoke because it's self-lined. I cut one of them on the cross grain. So you can see this yoke, the lines go up and down. This is the same yoke and the lines go across. Now you could easily choose to have your yoke go on the cross grain or even on the bias, as long as you interfaced it really well, especially if you're doing something like I am with the stripe where you want the directional change. It could be super cute. I'm going to probably not have this on the outside. I haven't decided yet. I'm going to sew up my yoke, and then I'm going to look at it both ways to see which I prefer on here. I may choose the the horizontal stripes for the outside instead of the vertical stripes, though I cut it so that originally I cut it thinking the vertical stripes would be the one that shows and the horizontal stripes would be on the inside as the lining. Now that we've done that, though, we need to interface. Normally, I interface the one that's going to be on the outside. I make it the stiffer one, the solid one. This is a personal preference. Now, your pattern often will have you interface the one that's the inside or the lining side of it. And that makes the outside a little looser. So it's really personal preference. I like the firm. It always stays flat and nice looking on the side that's interfaced as a rule. So I tend to put it on the outside. It's a personal preference. On collars, you interface the underneath side so that you have more flexibility for turning. So it really depends on what you're doing. This is a yoke, so it's a different thing. Waistbands, you always interface, or usually the interface is on the outside, so it's sort of depending on the pattern piece too. So you make that decision for you and how it looks with your garment. Because this is an open weave, when I interface, it'll have a little bit of white behind the hole, though they did close up and they're not real open and you can't really see through them now that it's been washed, but it's very distinct. I just love it. So I'm going to interface really quickly, and I am going to go ahead and interface. Golly, that is so cute with the stripe going across. So here's the stripe going across, and here's the stripe going up and down. They're both so cute. Oh boy, I got to make a decision right away. Which do I prefer? I think I prefer the up and down for the outside. So I'm going to interface that, and then we will be ready to start assembling. This does have a right and a wrong. You have to really look for it though. Once in a while you'll see like a pulled thread, and that'll show that's the wrong side. I'm going to interface both of these, and then we'll move over here and start putting together our pieces. This should go pretty fast. Now that I'm interfaced, the very first thing I'm going to do, which is different than the pattern has you make your pockets right away, which if you're making a pocket, do it. After that, they have you do your side seams. But I'm telling you, it's easier to go ahead and do your basting stitches that we're going to use to gather up the top before you put your side seams together. So I'm going to do all of my gathering stitches. So I'm going to do the front and back along along the where it attaches to the yoke, and I'm going to go ahead and do the basting stitches for the sleeve too, since I already have my machine set for basting. So I'm going to do all of those first. Then we're going to come back and do our side seams, and I'm serging mine together, so that's going to go really fast. So for a little bit, I'm just going to put this on speed. You're just going to hear some music, and we're going to get some sewing done. now that that's done, the first thing we're going to do, I've got all my basting lines in. We're going to put right sides together, and we're going to sew up our side seams on the lower part of the bodice. So I'm checking my right sides, and I have put in my garments. I have a little pin for my center fronts and center backs, so I can tell them apart. The green one's the back, the white one's the front. They're very similar looking, and so it makes it easy for me at a glance to tell the front from the back when I'm putting things together. And I do have the notches marked, so I can tell one notch is the front and 2 notches is the back, so that helps also. So we're just going to serge this together real quick on the side seams. Now that I have my side seams together, I'm going to go ahead and open this up, and I'm just going to serge around the hem and finish off this raw edge of the hem real quick. So that part's done, and it won't fray. It just makes it nice and holds everything together. So we're just going to go around the bottom edge. Now, if you're going to do the type of hem where you fold your edge, you fold up the raw edge and then you fold it again and you stitch it down, you don't need to serge it. But I'm going to just do a fold up and serged edge. I'm not going to do the double folded hem, the self-enclosed hem. That is done. Now, if you were going to just follow directly by the patterns, and you could go ahead and put your hem in now if you wanted to, it doesn't really matter because nothing else crosses the hem. So now that that is done, I just knocked out my pin. I knocked out my center back pin. Got to get it. Now that we have our side seams in, the next thing is to sew the shoulders together of our 2 little yokes. So you're going to put right sides together. You're going to have 2 that have the interfacing, and those are going to get sewn together, and 2 that don't have interfacing, and you're going to sew your shoulders together. When you're doing this, I want you to notice that the back of the yoke at the shoulder is wider than the front of the yoke, so they don't fit together perfectly. They have some ease in this yoke. It doesn't really need it. Sometimes you do want a lot of extra ease in the back shoulder. I don't know exactly why the pattern making in this, I don't think it was necessary, but it's there. So you need to be aware when you're putting this together. There's some ease in the back side of that yoke in the shoulder when you're putting them together, just so you know. So both of those together. Once that's done, we're going to take our front and our back yoke, and we're going to pin our front and our back bodice together. So here is my front yoke. The front yoke is smaller than the back yoke, so that makes it easier to tell. We're going to put right sides together on the yokes, and we're going to pin it, match up our center fronts, and then we're going to pull in our little gather lines to ease in all the fullness of this front to that yoke. We'll do the same in the back, and then we'll just stitch it in. Very straightforward, pretty easy. Now, you can choose to have even gathers from seam edge to seam edge, or you can kind of bunch them all in the center front. I think in the picture it kind of shows it more bunched in the front and not as much on the sides. It's up to you. You get to choose. These are some of the things that make sewing fun, is you get to kind of make it your own. You can move the gathers where you want them to make it flattering for you. So let's put our bodice together at the yoke. We're just going to pin, gather, and straight stitch this front and back on the yoke, and then we'll apply the next part of our yoke. So here's my front yoke, and here's my front bodice.
And you can see how it's gathered on. And I did kind of move the gathers more to the front. It's lightly gathered out on the outer edges and more gathered in the front. And that's it. So now I'm just going to straight stitch this in at 5/8, and then I'm going to come around and do the same thing for the back, and then I'll show you what's next for the yoke. All right, so here's the front. You can see here's my stripe and the gathers. Very sweet. I really like it.
So I've got my bodice attached to the yoke. Very simple. I've got my yoke lining here, and I've attached my tag to it. So now I'm going to take my yoke lining to my yoke, right sides together. So I flip this around to the right side. Look at how cute that's going to be. Very cute. Okay, so now I'm going to take my yoke lining to my yoke. I'm going to press open these seams. I'm going to just line the neckline. So make sure you get front to front, back to back. Line up our shoulder seams first. I'm going to press these seams open. Always, even if you never press it again, press these before you sew it. Your garment, your finished garment is always going to look better. So I'm going to give these a quick press, and then I'm lining up everything on the seams, and we're going to sew around that square of the neck. Close-ups for you to show you how to clip it in, turn it around, and press it. So I'll see you over at the ironing board.
Here's my neckline from the inside. So this is the facing. Here's the outside of my yoke, all pinned around that square, and we're just going to sew all the way around the square. Make sure you get nice and sturdy in these corners. I'm going to sew, sink the needle, and turn because we're clipping into those corners. So you want to make sure you have good stitching. It's good and sturdy in those corners where we are going to clip in. And I do have my little label in the back now for when I'm done. Everything's pressed at the seams. We're ready to go.
So I am feeding this on, and I have got my side seams sewn together. You really could have put the front and back on the yokes first and sewn this and then done the side seams. It would have been probably easier. Doesn't really matter that much. Depends on your level of how comfortable you are with things. That's one thing about sewing, is not everything has to be sewn in a certain order. It is ordinal, but not 100%. There's some things that are a little interchangeable. So now that I've done that, I'm just feeding on the lower portion of the bodice all the way up till I get to this yoke, so that now I can sew around this yoke on my 5/8 inch. If you notice the way I have this set up, normally you have your seam allowance on this side. I've currently got it on the wrong side, so I could continue to feed this around like this so that I'm sewing more comfortably. It's up to you. Do what you're comfortable with. I'm going to go around my corners all the way around in my squircle, as I know someone used to say. It's a square circle. So we're going to go around our squircle. I'm sewing with the lining side up. If you find that you have too much movement, put the interfaced side up. Flip it over so you see the interfacing. It's more stable. You can let the feed dogs do the easing on the lining side if you're having any issues. Once you're done, check to make sure you didn't get any little foldovers at your seam allowances, that you didn't flip one over accidentally. And we've got our little circle, our squircle done. We're going to come in now, let me grab my scissors, at these corners, and we're going to clip in to but not through that stitching. So let me show you a close-up of that. So here's my stitching line, and I'm going to come in up to but not through on all of those quarters to release that, so that when we turn it, it won't be bound up. Do not do this section till you've checked and made sure that your stitching's correct and that you don't have any problems or any bubbles. But we're going to come around and do that for all 4 corners. And once we've done that, this will now flip around to the inside and finish that off. So we're going to flip all that around to the inside and press it around the neckline. You can, at this point, top stitch it if you want to. So it's going to flip around like that. So let's go give it a good pressing so you can see what it looks like. And then we're going to finish off the inside of that yoke. Okay, all pinned in, ready to go to the sewing machine. This is the inside. So ideally, you would want to top stitch from the right side. And if you were going to do that, you need to switch your pins around. So see how I have my pins? I'm actually going to turn around and put pins in again, holding everything, and then pull these out so that I can see the pins before I hit them. My personal preference, I like to, whenever possible, top stitch on the right side instead of the wrong side, because you see exactly what you're going to see when you're finished. And then I think I will go ahead and top stitch around this too, and then we're ready to move on to sleeve. Look at how cute this is. I really like it. I am thinking, I'm curious how it's going to look on because it is nice and full and wide. I usually wear things that kind of show a waist because it makes me look a little slimmer. So we'll see how I like it on. I may add a tie, sort of a little thing in the front like this that I can tie it to give it a little more shape. And I may not, because I also really like just the super easy free way it is. So here we are with our cute little bodice. If you want this to be sleeveless, it would be pretty easy to finish off this edge with a bias or something, and you'd have a really cute, simple little sleeveless top. But we're going to put our sleeves. So next, we're going to take our sleeves, we're going to put them right sides together, and we're going to go ahead and sew up this underarm seam for both of them. And then we're going to go ahead and put in a thin little hem at the bottom. Now, I could easily just serge and turn up once if I want to, but because this rolls up and you're going to see the wrong side, potentially, I'm going to do a little micro hem, or I'm going to fold it up 1/4 of an inch and then fold it again and stitch it around to give it a tiny little hem in the bottom. So let's get this serged together real quick and get our hems in. All right, let's press this and put in our little hems. Here's the inside of my garment. This is my armscye, and here's my sleeve, and I've just started matching at the underarm, the notches, the shoulder, and I'm pinning it around. And once I get that in, I'm going to use my basting stitches to ease in the gathers. And it should be pretty flat. There shouldn't be a lot in there. It's not like a really gathered sleeve. Once that's done, I'm going to straight stitch all the way around at 5/8, and then I'm going to come over to my serger and finish off that seam allowance, and both sleeves will be in. So just take your time getting everything lined up. Make sure you get your notches lined up in your shoulder and so forth, and then it should go in pretty easily. Mine is anyway. Just a quick look. Here's the inside of the sleeve, sewn in and serged, just so you can see how that looks, how nice and even. And you can see that there's not a lot of gathers. It eases in really nicely, so it's not a puffy sleeve at all. Nice set-in sleeve. And now's the time, I've already started doing it, to pull out any of your basting stitches. You don't want them to show. Okay, all that's left is the hem. I'm going to roll up the sleeve and tack it where I want it. I tried it on to see how it fits and what I think. I like it a lot. I think it's super cute. So I'm going to put in the hem, and then I'll head over and show you exactly how it looks all finished. See you in a minute. Well, for a fast, comfy top, this is hard to beat. It's the perfect length for leggings. It would be a great swimsuit cover-up, which is what it was intended for in the original pattern. I love the sleeve. Let me show you the sleeve. I'm going to just unfold one so you can see how long it is. It's quite long. I didn't alter it all for me to wear it as a long sleeve, but this is the sleeve
If you don't roll it up, you can roll it as much as you want to get it as high as you want. I like the sleeve a lot. I think it's a fun, easy, practical sleeve. I could see making this again, as I usually, if I like a garment, it gets made again, if I like a pattern. I could see making this again and wearing a turtleneck under it. If I make something a little less summery, this could definitely be worn more seasons. I also didn't do the pockets on the front, but it would make a great like artist's smock. My grandmother used to wear something sort of like this with the big pockets that she painted in, and I could see making something like this for an artist's smock. It would be great for that, very practical. Took me an hour and a half-ish total to cut out and sew. Very fast as far as sewing goes. When I filmed this, I have 51 minutes of film of sewing time. So it's pretty much everything I did, I filmed. I just cut a lot out for you so you don't have to sit through all of that, or I speed it up. But it's a very fast pattern and it sews together really well. I think it's super cute. I'm really happy. I was worried about how full it is. It's very full, and that I might feel frumpy in it, but I don't. I just think it feels comfy and soft and easy to wear. What a super simple, cute top. If you sew this, leave me a comment and tell me that you made it, or if you sew it up and you take a picture over on Instagram, tag me on Instagram. I have the information down below where you can find me on Instagram. I'd love to know if you make this project. See you next week for another fun video.